Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of NYJ Ground Crew. It is December 2nd, Friday, Flight Plan Friday. Of course, we're going to talk about the Minnesota game. You might notice from my background a little bit different today. Well, I'm actually in the motherland. I'm back in New York in the Bowery Hotel, live streaming directly from, well, I'm not going to give you my room number, but it's good to be here. It's good to be back in New York. Been in Los Angeles over 20 years. Johnny, as always, it's good to see you. How you doing?
Where am I coming from?
You're right. I didn't introduce you correctly. As always, reporting from Jets Universe, Johnny Jets.
Hello, Jets Universe.
Hello, Johnny. Good to see you. I meant it when I said it, and I'm saying it again. How you been, man?
Really good, really good. Looking for the big game up in Minnesota this Sunday.
How can you not be, right? And how can we not be, especially after the Patriots lost last night? I saw a lot of people obviously banging the drum for the Patriots to win because everybody wants the Jets to win the AFC East, and that would mean Buffalo losing. But I think the more realistic of us fans are thinking, hey, Buffalo is probably going to go 4-2, 5-1, if not 6-0 over those last 6 games, last night included. So we're probably better off getting the Patriots out of the way and worrying just about the Cincinnati Bengals and or those pesky Los Angeles Chargers. Do you agree?
I do not agree. I feel that the Jets' simplest path, though, and not a simple one at all, is to win the AFC East. Therefore, I was rooting for the Patriots last night. I think that for the Jets to win a wild card berth, 12 games would be a lock. 11 is iffy, and 10 is not going to get it done.
I love it, man. I know we talked about it the other day, but, and we have differing opinions on this. I'm still extremely optimistic we're going to get that wild card. But like you, I don't want to sound like, defeatist and all of that. Of course, I want the Jets to win the AFC East. What an amazing story that would be to begin with. 5.5 wins predicted on the beginning of the year, and all of a sudden they're AFC East champions. And why not? We've got the 1 win over Buffalo. We've got the 1 win over Miami as well. Okay, I want to talk about something else quickly, and then we're going to jump into a number of topics. But I want to tell you something. On the plane over yesterday, I finally saw Top Gun Maverick for the first time. Don't know if you've seen this movie, but you know what really jumped out at me in a movie all about jets? The ground crew. I got to tell you something. The movie started with the ground crew supported. I mean, they really gave some opening shots, and it just hit me when they get back on the carrier on the tarmac after it. I mean, a swarming amount, hundreds. And I kind of remember that from the first movie from like 30 plus years ago. But this time around, I mean, really, they were just a big part of the movie. I thought that was cool. We are NYJ Ground Crew. How am I not going to bring that up?
I appreciate that you have other interests besides the New York Jets. I don't. I think perhaps you want to reach out to Martin Sheen, who played a part of a ground crew in Wall Street in 1987. Perhaps Oliver Stone still has his phone number.
What was it? Blue Horseshoe loves blue. Yeah, exactly. I remember that. You're right. Maybe I'm going to reach into Martin Sheen. Maybe we'll have him on the show. Maybe you got to talk to him about being part of the ground crew. No other interest. Just Jets football.
I can talk about Jets football. That's all I know. That's all there is.
Let's talk James Robinson. More drama in the New York Jets universe. Becton, Mims, Moore, Wilson, and now James Robinson. I mean, is this really a story, or, is he just suiting up this weekend with all intentions to take Michael Carter's place and play just as well as him?
Yeah, I like the fact that Brian Costello from the New York Post tweeted out today that Michael Carter is inactive for this Sunday. I don't know who he's talking about. There's more than one Michael Carter on the Jets.
You don't know if it's our cornerback or if it's our running back.
How am I supposed to know? I'm relying on the media to inform me about Jets football, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, yeah, if we all relied on the media, we'd be in a lot of trouble, ourselves included. But, again, back to Bob Saleh here, doing what I think is a very good job. Yeah, Bob, we're on a first name basis. We're on that term. If you know him as well as I do, it's actually Bobby. It's really Bobby Saleh. Yeah, no, Coach, not as well as I know him. Me and Bobby go way back.
You're the good.
Again, I think he's doing a phenomenal job quelling the drama. This is such a big story to me. This is something as a fan forever I've always been annoyed by. The team did not know how to handle their players. They did not know how to handle drama. They always allowed a locker room rift, more specifically from that media you're talking about, trying to find any little nugget, any little story to hold on to. And here's James Robinson again. And this is, in my opinion, going to be swept under the rug, no problem. He's going to be active this weekend. And I think he's going to do very well against Minnesota. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it was the old Casey Stengel quote who said the key to managing is keeping the half of the team that hates you away from the team that's indifferent.
I always appreciate you bringing up old school history like that.
A guy born in 1890 will always tell you about the present.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, of course. Well, history does repeat itself, as we know. Okay, but let's move on to Sheldon Rankins. Okay, I think he's somebody worth talking about. He's making his way back this week, and to me, this is a huge addition back to the starting line. It cannot be overlooked. And I want to deep dive for a quick second, because we know he wasn't great in 2021 when he came over as a free agent. He's been very good this year. Let me give you some of these numbers. In 2021, he played 16 games total. He's only played 9 this year, but in 2021, 32 total tackles, 15 of them solo. This year in only 9 games, he's got 25 total tackles already. 17 of them have been solo. That's already more than last year and 6 less games. He's second behind only Quinn Williams for total defensive tackle snap count. He's also already has 2 sacks this year in 9 games when he only had 3 all of last year. How important is he to our success, not only in this game, but moving forward?
I think the question is, can he be effective in stopping the run? The Jets defense did not stop the run against New England 2 weeks ago and did not stop the run against the Bears in the first quarter of that game this past Sunday. Sheldon Rankins can contribute in that way, bring it on. But that's a very concerning aspect of the Jets defense this Sunday at Minnesota.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the interior line stopping the run has been iffy, and it's been that way obviously for a couple of years. But for the most part, on the second level, they're doing a good job and really doing a decent job on the edge. And that's why we got the young guys like Jermaine Johnson, who of course had the massive tackle, as we know, on Josh Allen a couple of weeks ago. One of the reasons we said we got him, but really it's about setting the edge and stopping the run on the outside like that. But Rankins, for the most part, has done a pretty decent job. And again, this is a weird year for the NFL because it seems like the running backs are making their way back in a huge way and having an effect on a lot of games. The Jets also, for how great their defense has been, I think we can all kind of agree that for the most part in the season, that first quarter, they've always been a little bend, don't break, right? And a lot of the damage is done then. They tighten up throughout the game, and by the end of the game, they really look strong, especially in the second half, especially after adjustments. Again, more giving credit to the coaching staff. But yeah, to your point, I mean, Sheldon Rankins specifically needs to get out there and he needs to stop the run, but he's really got to make Cousins uncomfortable. What do you think is more important, making Cousins uncomfortable or stopping the run? What do we need Sheldon to do this weekend?
I don't know how you make Cousins uncomfortable. The guy's a robot. He has no feelings.
He might very well be. One of the reasons they love him in the Midwest. Okay. I want to bring up, and I love paying homage and big shout outs to Jets X Factor. I love what they do over there. I'm a big fan of that. I'm on Bleacher Report all the time. I think their writers are incredible. Michael Nania.
What's your nickname for the editor of that publication? Is it Bob?
Are you talking about Sabo? Robbie? No, he goes by Robbie, so he's good. But somebody else. I mean, because we've talked about Sheldon. Let's go to the other side of the ball. Corey Davis, getting him back. Okay. And Michael Nania did a great job this week, really breaking down how important he's been and how much better he is than your favorite New York Jet this year, Denzel Mims. Because there's 2 things that Davis brings to the table. Besides, obviously, his ability to get out there and catch in space and win balls and all of that, he is a huge difference maker in our own run game, if you break it down. And Michael does a good job of breaking this down, and I want to show this. So off the field, okay, without Corey Davis on the field, 109 carries, 426 yards with a 3.91 yard per carry. That's our running game. When Davis is on the field, that's 111 carries, 575 yards, and a 5.18 yard per carry. That's a big difference. 3.91 yards per carry and 5.18 yards per carry is a huge difference. And just to be clear, before AVT and Breece Hall went down, it was the same thing in Davis's numbers, because obviously Davis was out after those guys went down and pretty much around the same time around the Denver game when he went out before he came back. But he was a big difference maker on the field last week against the Bears. Mims has had some pretty good moments of blocking and some pretty boneheaded moments like Denzel Mims always has. But Davis has been a stalwart there. And this is a huge difference having a guy like him. Your thoughts? How important he is.
So what would your be examples of Denzel Mims' boneheaded moments in the blocking game?
Well, I mean, he's had a few whiffs. I mean, if you go back and watch the tape, there's a couple times when he just wasn't as strong as he ultimately could have been. And obviously, he's one of the more penalized wide receivers, as we know, throughout his career at some wrong times in the game. So I'm going to point to that specifically. I mean,
the argument is that Corey Davis is more effective in the blocking game to help the running game.
Right. The argument is that Corey Davis is more effective, and not only that, but a lot more effective, and helps solidify the line. And a big, part of when you're obviously doing that, you're solidifying the line, making them feel good, and it trickles over into pass protection, which I think we saw against the Bears game last week. I mean, yeah, White got the ball out pretty quickly, but the offensive line did a great job, and a lot of that stems from wide receiver help, and certainly having tight end help as well, right? When you're putting out 12 personnel or even 13 personnel, and you got your 2 tight ends out there. But yeah, Corey Davis is a big difference maker.
I also think it also stems from the fact that on this past Sunday, the Jets had a quarterback where the defense knew that quarterback can complete a screen pass, whereas with Zach Wilson, they could just focus on stopping the running game and let Zach throw.
Yeah, that's also a very good point. But talking about him, talking about White, what are you hoping to see from Mike White? What do you want to see from this guy moving forward in the next 6 games?
I want to see him start all 6 games.
Yeah. No question, right? We don't even want to think about Zach Wilson or him coming back. And I don't think, those of us who are realistic aren't thinking about him coming back. But you're thinking White standing upright, being healthy, staying protected, as opposed to putting Flacco back there? Or are you worried more about Wilson?
Well, to me, there are only 2 reasons why Mike White does not start all 6 remaining regular season games for the Jets. And if the Jets somehow make the playoffs, which I'm not counting on a playoff game. 1, he doesn't play because he's injured. Now, as we know, in his second start last year against the Colts, he was injured. If you believe the conspiracy theory that Woody and Christopher Johnson put the hit on Mike White in the Colts game last year after Mike White's huge game against the Bengals because they didn't want him to be the guy and they wanted Zach Wilson to not have that kind of competition, then you will expect Woody and Christopher Johnson to put the hit on Mike White in this game against Minnesota. So certainly conspiracy theorists out there, look for that one. The other reason why Mike White would not start the remainder of the season is along the same lines. He's going to have 2 very good teams that he's playing against the next 2 weeks in Minnesota and in Buffalo. And the chances are that the Jets will not win both of these games. It's possible they could, but it's possible they could split, and it's quite possible that they could lose both games. I think not going 2-0, if the Jets go 1-1 or the Jets go 0-2, that the Jets are sufficiently stupid enough to, on that basis, bench Mike White and put Zach Wilson back in.
Yeah, we have a history of doing so and being that stupid, certainly. But I don't see that happening. I don't see Wilson seeing the field no matter what happens this year. You talk about a reset, that's not happening.
Then how do you explain Bob's? Can I call him Bob? I'll call him Coach. How do you explain Coach's comments this week that they're still resetting Zach Wilson and the expectation is to get Zach on the field during the rest of the season at some point?
Lip service, you have to say that when you take the number 2 pick. You have to say that to the fan base who are still believers in the young kid. You have to keep I think the team understands that you got to stand in front of the media, and you got to keep the media at bay because it helps not create drama, because they want to create the quarterback controversy. They want to anoint Mike White already. And I think that this thing about this, Mike White, and I want to believe in him and I want to back this guy in the biggest possible way. And I love seeing him when he came in last year. One thing I personally want to see from him is the leadership when the game is tight at the end of the game. And you don't know anything about a quarterback until you see something like that, right? Until he's out there and doesn't make what the backup or the third stringer is expected to do and make the mistake and throw the interception. And he actually leads the team when the game is tight, and he leads a scoring drive or brings you all the way back at the end, whether that's the end of the game scoring drive or somewhere in the last couple of minutes, and just efficiently goes out there and shows the leadership skills and keeps the team, cogent at the right times. You don't know anything about the guy. It's awesome that he went out there and threw over 300 yards and the 3 touchdowns, and how fast he is, and the quick release and all of that, and how well he sees the field. But the main part of playing quarterback is crunch time.
Right. Well, all of these things that you're saying that we still need to see from Mike White before we can believe in Mike White, we have yet to see from Zach Wilson at all. So, I think the litmus test or what the test is, I should say, for Mike White in the remainder of the season does he have the ability? Does he demonstrate that he's able to win football games with the Jets and let the players around him make plays and the defense dominate the other team's offense so the Jets come up with more points than the other team at the end of the game? To me, that's the only test. I think based on what we've seen in Mike White's, is it 4 starts at this point? I believe this would be his 5th in his career as a Jet. I think he's demonstrated that he does that more than he doesn't do that. And then Zach Wilson has never demonstrated that he's done that at all. And but what you said about Coach Saleh and the lip service, I don't know if that's a conspiracy theory in the strictest sense of the word, but I think it echoes a tinge of conspiracy theory, and I welcome that. And if I can be on a first name basis, lip service is one of Declan's greatest songs, and I'll leave it at that. It's on Armed Forces.
Yeah, well, look, I think the other, even though the players in the locker room might not otherwise want to see Wilson back on the field, I think at this point, a few of them would even think that he should be the guy or want to see them back on the field. They do want to know that their coach is standing in front of the media. And if it was them who needed a reset, if it was them who was hurt, if it was their starting job that was taken, they would want to think that they'd have their opportunity to see the field again. So that, from a psychological perspective, makes sense why Bobby's got to say what he does. And I think he's doing a good job of it. And I still think he's saying the right things. One thing I'm going to throw some numbers out from Mike White because I want to see these as well. I'm just going to say this: 64% plus, 28 to 32 passes a game, 2 TDs, and 8 different receivers. And specifically in this Minnesota game, that's what I'd like to see from a quarterback like him. Hopefully he doesn't have to throw more than that, because if he does, it means we're losing, and he's just out there slinging the ball around as much as possible to play catch up. But when you talk about the ability to throw to hit 64% completion percentage, I mean, he's really got an opportunity to do 70% plus. I mean, he's the kind of guy who could game in and game out. And we talked about this, that his last 6 games of the season, not against the toughest competition, at least in the secondary. But what he does have to face this weekend are 2 of the absolute best pass rushers in the game. And in fact, combined, Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter have more pressures than anybody in the league. So our offensive line has to do double the job, and Corey Davis better be in there and help blocking and get everybody right on this, because the pass rush is what could be Mike White's undoing.
Well, you're absolutely right. If Mike White has no time, and Mike White is under pressure all the time, and that's not going to reflect well on Mike White, and it's not going to reflect well on the Jets offense. The Minnesota defense overall is not great. To your point about the pass rush, it'd have to play around that. I think that would involve more separation by the receivers getting open, and Mike White's ability to not just go through his progressions, but also go to his hot outlet receiver and get those completions done, to put a question mark in the minds of these above average to good pass rushers on the Minnesota side of the football. But I don't think it's so much that the Jets are going to have to play catch up. I think it's the fact that Minnesota is a great offensive team, and they're going to score points. So the Jets are going to have to score points to keep it a game. Certainly if they're down 2 scores, 3 scores, then then they have to play catch up. But I think that they're going to have to put touchdowns on instead of field goals, or just punting away. It's not going to be a game in the 20s by anyone's expectation.
I'm glad you brought up the word great, because there's, you listen to a lot of podcasts around the NFL, and people are trying to anoint Minnesota as a great team. They've been doing their best to do that with the 9-2 record, but most of them, and I would be in agreement with this, are really just coming up with the word good. I don't think that they're a great team. I don't think that they're a great offensive team by any stretch of the imagination. I think Dalvin Cook is a great offensive player, certainly, or was, but he's trailing or moving towards more like good. He's on my fantasy team, so believe me, I know. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's great. Justin Jefferson is transcendent, but we've got one of those guys emerging on our side of the ball as well. But our secondary is that good compared to theirs. It's not even a question. So, if you're going to throw Reed out there, or you're going to throw Michael Carter, the other one, certainly, and you're going to put Sauce more than anything else, and you can help him do whatever he's got to do, shutting down, that side of the field, and specifically Justin Jefferson. I'm really optimistic. I'm much more optimistic about this game than I think a lot of games, and I've been penciling this one now for about 4 weeks. I think we win this one going away. I really see us winning by 15 plus points. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if, like the spread says, it's 3, and it's close at the end of the game. And again, Mike White's got to show up and do what he needs to do. But I really see us doing what we need to do, just like Dallas did not that long ago, because I think that's where Minnesota does not thrive. When you've got a good pass rush like we do, especially a 4-down pass rush, because Dallas has probably the best, if not one of the best, certainly in the league, and they've got a decent secondary. We have a phenomenal secondary. As long as these guys stay healthy and on the field, I talk about Robot Cousins. I'm not as worried about him. I'm not as worried about Cook, even if you're giving up somewhere between 80 to 120 yards to him. I'm worried about one guy in Justin Jefferson, and I'm excited about one guy on our side of the ball, Tyler Conklin. gets to go home, gets to show up the team that let him go. Your thoughts on him?
Well, Tyler Conklin, I guess that would be called a revenge game. That seems to be what the kids are calling these sorts of games these days. But to your point about the Jets secondary, they did not have a great game against Chicago. In fact, they played rather under average at the beginning of the Chicago game. Now, if you want to go Milli Vanilli, or because I'm on a first name basis, I call them MV, and blame it on the rain. They're not going to have rain on Sunday at Minnesota. It's indoors. So that won't be a factor. But the tail of the tape bears out that, no pun intended, that Sauce Gardner had perhaps his weakest game of the season of his NFL career against the Bears this past Sunday. Doesn't mean he was bad, just not he was not stellar.
Okay, he gave up one big play to Chase Claypool, but other than that, I don't think the kid really.
No, he was out. He was out of position on a bunch of things. But the thing about the Vikings is that they can kind of muddle along and be contained, and then they can just break out one play and gain like 55 yards.
Yeah, but so can we. By the way, we still one of the league leaders in big plays, obviously, and especially in the second half. But how many close games has Minnesota won? It's never a good look when you have to go out there and you're the team has to win 5 or 6 one-possession games a year. And it's good coaching, and you are the winner, and you are coming out on side of this. So there's something to be said about that. But I really feel like we can go out there and kind of put them in their place the same way that Dallas did, and I hope we do.
Well, it's certainly possible. My feeling overall about this game against the Vikings on Sunday is that it's a non-conference game. So whether we win it or we lose it, in the grand scheme of things, it pales in comparison in terms of importance to the following week against Buffalo and the remaining AFC conference games. The Jets need to win their AFC conference games, period, to make the playoffs. If they lose against the Vikings, if the Jets lose against the Seahawks, while it's not good, it's not fatal. Every loss against an AFC team at this point is seriously damaging to the Jets making the playoffs this year, because right now the Jets have the worst AFC conference record of any of the 9 playoff teams. AFC teams are in playoff contention. So, while it'd be good to go out and win this game, if it's a choice between losing at Minnesota and beating Buffalo or the reverse, then, I say lose at Minnesota and beat Buffalo.
It's a great point. You're bringing up a great point. The fact that we are so deficient in our AFC games does not bode well, certainly. But I still like our setup towards the end of the year and heading into the playoffs. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I got a couple of questions from everybody out there. Jeffrey Cohen asks, why isn't there enough chatter about us running the table? I don't know. A long-suffering Jets fan should definitely take this. What do you think about us going 6-0 at the end of this year? What are the probability of that? And why isn't there enough chatter about that?
There is next to no chatter about the Jets running the table in the remaining 6 games in 2022. Number one, because they are the Jets. 6-0 is perfection.
Let's just drop that. Number one, they are the Jets. So yeah. That's fair enough. Why
Profundity is my middle name.
Sure.
But once we know each other better, you can call me by my middle name. But back to JC's question.
Actually, it's G. This is Jeffrey with a G. Just so you know.
Oh, you set me up there. I see what you did there. Very good. You've been waiting 6 episodes to get me like that.
Wow, the long time.
Happy birthday. Yeah. The other Jets are not going to go 6-0. That's not going to happen. The other point is that there still remains the specter that whether it's through injury, but more likely it's because the Jets are the Jets, that they're going to bench Mike White and put Zach Wilson back in. And when they put Zach Wilson back in, they are not going to win every game that Zach Wilson starts moving forward in 2022. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be a colossal failure. It's going to be horrible. And it's going to be because they want to sell Zach Wilson jerseys. They're going to say it's because Mike White did not have a great game against Minnesota, or Mike did not have a great game against Buffalo, or whatever the reasoning is. They're going to find a reason, if they do, to bench Mike White, and for that reason, the Jets will not run the table.
Couldn't disagree more, but I love this because it sets up our next and final question. This is perfect. We're going to circle right back to this. Melody Caddison wants to know, what is it going to take from Mike? What's it going to take from Mike White to be the starter next year?
It's going to take Mike White winning the Super Bowl.
You
The
think
Jets do not
Mike
want
White has to?
the Jets do not want Mike White to be the starter of their team. They want Zach Wilson to be the starting quarterback of their team. And unless Mike White wins the Super Bowl, they are not going to make Mike White the starting quarterback going into 2023. At worst, it's going to be an open competition for Zach Wilson, whether it's against Mike White or whether it's against a veteran that they trade for or sign as a free agent. The New York Jets do not want Mike White to be the starting quarterback in the face of this franchise. They want that person to be Zach Wilson.
Okay, and I hear what you're saying. I mean, when we talk about this notion, the larger ideal of the New York Jets that they ultimately want Zach Wilson to be the face of this franchise. I guess we're talking about the Johnsons or we're talking about Joe Douglas. At this point, I disagree. The further away that he is from the team, the more he sits on the bench, the more all of us realize that, he was not the guy and is never going to be the guy, or at least not for this particular franchise. I don't see him having the future anymore on the team. I don't think he's going to be back this year. I really don't. And it wouldn't surprise me if he was gone next year. You make the trade. His agent's going to want him off the team. They're going to want a fresh start somewhere else. Again, I'm not saying all of this is going to happen. It just seems more and more likely that that's the case. Mike White can absolutely be the starter of this team next year. Mike White, if he goes out there over 6 games and shows the competency and shows the leadership and shows the ability in close games to be a quarterback, not a backup type quarterback, not what Cooper Rush looks like out there in the field, but actually the guy who played in the Bears game, who shows up and is saying, like anybody else, like a Kirk Cousins, if that's his ceiling, to go out there and play good football and lead the team and hand that ball off and make the defense feel confident and be a guy who's running specifically the LaFleur offense, right? Then you've got quick hits and you've got yards after catch and you've got, running in space. That's a very different look. And if that's what it's going to take, and Mike White's the one to do it. And again, he's been on this team now. We talked about this last week for a number of years at this point. And we've had him there since 2019. And there's a reason we've kept him around and a reason he's made his way all the way and jumped over Joe Flacco to get his chance here. I think he could very well be the starter next year, whether we make the trade for a guy like, everybody is talking, of course, about our man in San Francisco or our man up in Green Bay, and whether we get guys like that, I don't know. Or if you make a trade and you have some other quarterback to come in and I'm talking about through the draft and put it through, that's a possibility. But I think Mike White has a better chance of being the starting quarterback next year than Zach Wilson does, and I'm going to say that right now.
Well, everything you've said is true, but it also supports the argument as to why the Jets do not want Mike White to be the face of the franchise. The Jets knew and have known this whole time what they had in Mike White. They knew that he does not have the deficiencies that Zach Wilson does. They knew that he can move the team, that he can score points, that he can find the open receiver and hit that open receiver. And the Jets players knew it too, as articulated publicly by Elijah Moore and privately up until 2 weeks ago by Garrett Wilson. They all of the Jets knew from top to bottom that Mike White was a professional quarterback in the National Football League and Zach Wilson was not. And because they don't want Mike White to be the face of the franchise, because they want Zach Wilson to be the face of the franchise, that's why Zach Wilson was not benched at the end of the second Patriots game when he accomplished a total of 2 yards on offense the entire second half. Coach Saleh knew what he had in Mike White. He knew that if you put in Mike White, that Mike White would move the team down the field and score points to the Patriots. Because they didn't do that, because they want Zach Wilson to be the face of the franchise, they do not want Mike White to be the face of the franchise, they suffered that second Patriots loss, along with the first one, but certainly the second one, where now the Patriots have a tiebreaker against the Jets for playoff contention, and the Jets have another loss instead of a victory in terms of overall AFC conference record, which if they don't make the playoffs is going to be the reason they don't make the playoffs. So everything you've said about the qualities of Mike White, the Jets knew it all along. They kept him benched anyway. They didn't start him at the beginning of the season when Zach Wilson got hurt. They don't want him to be the face of the franchise, and everything they've done has supported that.
Well, I'm going to leave you with this. We're going to leave everybody with this. We think we know what the Jets had in Mike White. We think we know what we had in Mike White, except when Mike White got home that day after the Bears victory, what was the first thing his wife said to him? "Who are you?" So not everybody might know. And even
I'm not going to talk about someone's personal life. That's not what I'm here for.
No, but I'm with you on that. But I'm just saying, even his own wife is, "Who are you? Do we really know what we have in Mike White?" I guess we're certainly going to find out.
We've known what the Jets have in Mike. Crazy theory. Happy birthday, buddy.
Hey, Johnny, I appreciate, as always, reporting from Jets Universe, our good man on the field, Johnny Jets. This has been A.M. Pfeffer, your crew chief for NYJ Ground Crew. Go Jets this Sunday. And I want to tell you this. I'm on a flight back to Los Angeles this Sunday, but I made it exactly at 1 o'clock. Why? Because on JetBlue, they got live TV, and I'm very much looking forward to watching this game on that flight home. Everybody take care. Johnny, we'll talk next week. Thanks, man.
Goodbye, Jets Universe.